Welcome back, YouTube. Once again, this is your man Dylan coming to you live from North Carolina. We're going to be moving on in the series for part two of the NFL football season preview 2025-26 to move on to the second division in the AFC North, which will be, in the second division in the AFC, which will be the AFC North. That will be featuring the Baltimore Ravens, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Cleveland Browns. So, just like the last part of the series, we're going to start with the last place team from a year ago, which will be the Cleveland Browns. Cleveland is in the midst of dysfunction palooza, as I like to call it. Uh, a dreadful season last year, dreadful expectations this year, and really not a lot of hope surrounding that organization right now. So let's go ahead and talk about them. So Cleveland, of course, has been one of the oldest franchises, one of the founding members of the NFL way back in the 60s and stuff like that. And the theme with Cleveland is that they'll either say this year's our year, which sounds like Cowboys fans, or they'll say, oh, the great days that were back in the 60s and the 80s and stuff like that. Kevin Stefanski, formerly of the Minnesota Vikings, he's in his sixth season in Cleveland, and all he has to produce from that time period is one playoff win during the COVID year, which is really not good. Now, the interesting story with Cleveland every year is who's going to be the quarterback. They have had, I believe, 40 starters since re-entering the league in 1999, which is by far the most in the NFL within that time span. And once again, a similar story will reappear. We have got on the roster 4 quarterbacks that could have a shot at the starting job come week 1 when they play the Cincinnati Bengals. So Deshaun Watson, of course, has been the the bane of Cleveland Browns' existence for the last 5 years. They gave up way too much for him, and he has certainly not produced during his time in Cleveland. So they went out, they got Joe Flacco, they signed him to a $4 million 1-year deal. They got Kenny Pickett, they went and drafted Dillon Gabriel from Oregon, and then they went with I wouldn't say questionable, but they went with the most confusing pick in the 2025 NFL draft by drafting Shedeur Sanders, Deion Sanders, this kid out of Colorado. No one really knows why they drafted him. I guess they just felt like drafting because, why not? I'm Cleveland. I'll just draft a quarterback because quarterback is always the problem. Jerome Ford and Quinshon Judkins, their recent draft pick, will be the first and second string running back. You got David Njoku at tight end, Jerry Jeudy, Deontay Johnson that they just signed. They do not, I believe, have DJ Moore anymore, or Chris Moore, whoever was one of the Moores on that team. He got shipped out. But on the offensive line, they still got Conklin, they still got Bitonio, so they've got some pieces there on the offensive line. Now, speaking of big deals, they went out and signed Myles Garrett to all that big cash extension, got him in Cleveland for the next, I believe, 4 years. And I just think Cleveland is just screwed. They've got all the money tied up in Deshaun Watson, who can't do anything, and Myles Garrett, who's probably got probably about 4 more years, and then he's going to be tapped. But on defense, there will be no Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. He's going to be on the PUP list, so he will be inactive for the entire season. So if you look on their defense, they've got Denzel Ward, they got Grant Delpit, they got Ronnie Hickman, but it's just another questionable offense and defense for their key starters, and it's going to lead to a lot of question marks for this team and whether or not this season it can be salvageable in any way, shape, or form. But we turn our attention to their schedule. Oh dear God, this schedule it's going to be a brute to say the least. Not the hardest in the league. That will come much later on when we talk about the New York Giants. We'll get to them much later. But they start the season with 4 teams that are either were in the playoffs last season or been in the playoffs in the last 5 years. They play at home against the Cincinnati Bengals in the Battle of Ohio for the second time in Week 1 in the last 3 seasons. Then they go to Baltimore, where they're, Lord help you with that. Then they'll play Green Bay and Detroit and Minnesota back-to-back weeks. Of course, the game against Minnesota will be in London for that one. And then you play Pittsburgh. So, your first 6 weeks, you're playing 3 teams in the division, and then the NFC North, which was arguably the strongest division in football last year. So that's a great way to start your schedule. Your bye week comes in the middle of the season in week number 9. I do not have them winning a single game until they play the New England Patriots in week 8. I do have them going on a 3-game winning streak against San Francisco, Tennessee, and Chicago in weeks 13 through 15. But I do not sense that this is going to be a good year for Pittsburgh. I do not have them winning one division game. I have them going 4-13, which will be under their 4.5 win total projection. It would be a 1 game improvement from a year ago, but I think after this season, it's going to be Kevin Stefanski is going to get the boot, and who the heck knows what's going to happen in Cleveland. Of course, the other minor news is that Charles Woodson is now a part owner in the Cleveland Browns, so hopefully that might bring some change to the organization because Jimmy and Dee Haslam have pretty much ran that organization into the ground, which, I mean, they could have said that 8 years ago when they went 0-17, so that's a different animal. But I do not have them, again, 4-13, winning their first game in week 8, and I do not have them winning a single game until then. But I think it's going to be another abysmal year in Cleveland. I think it's going to be the start, or the continuation of just dreadful football for Cleveland. At least I see this pattern being around for the foreseeable future, in my opinion. Alright, so in the next video, we're going to discuss the other Ohio team, which will be the third place team, the Cincinnati Bengals, my team. We're going to discuss them in the next video, but until then, this is your man Dylan signing off. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.